Good evening and welcome to Domination and Submission Radio, DS Radio. My name is Mike Makai and I am your host with the most DS, BDSM, kink, and fetish talk on Blog Talk Radio or anywhere as far as we're concerned. We're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things this evening, and the first thing I want to do is tell you how you can be a part of this show. It is a call-in show. We don't get too many people calling in, but that should change tonight. I think you should call in. If you want to call in, tell us what you think or ask a question or share some of your experiences, then call us at 347-857-1862. Again, 347-857-1862. We would love to have you call in, so don't feel shy about doing that. We also have a website that you can check out online. That is domination-submission.com, domination-submission.com. If you're shy about calling in and asking a question or making your comments, then by all means scroll to the bottom of your screen if you're listening to us live at Blog Talk Radio, and you'll see a chat room. There you can ask your questions or make comments as well, as long as you are logged in with your free Blog Talk Radio account. So we have our co-host with the most, our switchy Amazon redhead, Little Red. Are you there, Red?
Yes, I'm here, Mike.
Cool. Are you ready to do tonight's show? You know what we're doing a show on tonight, don't you?
I think it's on the Pervertables, isn't it?
Pervertables, exactly. For those of you who are listening and don't know what a pervertible is, it's a term that has come into use to refer to common household items which can be converted to pervy purposes, kink toys and the like. And so we'll be talking tonight about the various ways you can turn everyday items that you might find in your home or at the hobby shop or at the local hardware store into kink toys that you can use for fun and profit, perhaps. So, you got any pervertibles at your house, Red?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. And they're awesome.
Tell the audience why we have pervertibles. Why do people create pervertibles? Why do you have pervertibles at your house, Red?
I have pervertibles for the simple fact that we live in the middle of CFE, and there are no really good toy shops around here. You can go get your standard vibrators and your eggs and your bullets and some anal plugs. You know, you can go get that kind of thing, but you can't get heavy impact toys here. We don't have those kind of shops here. So we kind of have to mix it up because we don't have access to it right now. And I'm an instant gratification girl, so I don't like waiting for my online orders.
Right. So essentially, there's a couple of good reasons for learning how to create your own pervertibles. One of them is that even when you can get quality toys locally, and as Red just said, sometimes that's really, really very difficult. You might have somewhat decent adult novelty shops around, but in general, the quality of the gear, the toys, the impact utensils and things like that are not very good. And when you do find something, even if you have to go quite a distance to find it or order it online, these things tend to be very, very expensive. It's not unusual for a quality constructed elk hide flogger, for example, to go for $250, $400. It's not unusual at all. And so unless you're willing to spend that kind of money on a regular basis for these things, sometimes it can be very useful to learn how to create some of your own toys at home. And that way it's made to order. And you never know, you might learn that you're good at it and find yourself making them for your friends and other folks as well, and maybe making a little extra money at it. So in general, quality BDSM toys are pricey. They're very expensive. You can expect to spend a couple $100 for a good flogger. You can expect to spend anywhere from $20 to $50 for a good cane, for paddles anywhere from $20 to $100, and the list just goes on and on and on. So what's really bad is even the really crappy stuff is very expensive, and that's a shame when you spend good money for really bad quality BDSM toys. Now, the other thing that you might want to think about, and this is something a lot of people don't think about, is that a lot of these toys are very expendable. They tend to take a lot of punishment and therefore break down after a while. They're sometimes exposed to different materials that cause them to break down. Sometimes they're exposed to bodily fluids which makes them not a smart idea to share them from person to person if it's been exposed to bodily fluids. So even something that you wouldn't normally think of as being a toy that comes into contact with bodily fluid. Let's say a flogger. Most floggers do not come into contact with bodily fluids. However, it's not unusual for a flogger from time to time to come into contact with some kind of bodily fluid. And then the question is, how do you sterilize that so that it can be used by other people and you're not sharing bodily fluids from one person to another? So, again, toys that you may not consider to be typically associated with the risk of spreading disease or spreading illness or bloodborne or sexually transmitted diseases, even those can be risky at times. All right, so let's talk, Red, first about your favorite, some impact toys. We're gonna kind of go through these in big chunks. At first, we're going to talk impact toys, and by that, we're talking primarily canes and paddles. Which do you like more, canes or paddles? We'll start with whatever your favorite is, Red.
I am not a fan of the cane, as we well know, so I'll pass on that, and I'll go to paddles.
Paddles for $500, Alex. Let's talk first about just creating your own paddles out of wood. You know, you take a plank of wood and you create it out of that plank of wood. And you know a few people who work with wood. What's involved in doing something like that, Red?
I do know a couple of people that are very handy. You know them as well. It's all dependent on how intricate you want to get. What kind of wood do you want? Do you want hardwood? Do you want softwood for an easier usage, but it's going to break after a while? And all you really need is a sander. You can take a piece of wood, have it cut to size at your local Home Depot, 12, 16 inches long, get a sander, and just work on it. You can even do it by hand with a hand sander. I wouldn't recommend it because
it's a lot of work, yeah.
It is a lot of work, but it's also worth it if you want to make it completely what you want.
Mm-hmm. And all you really need is a jigsaw, a jigsaw to cut it to whatever pattern you want. And you go to someplace like Home Depot or Lowe's home store, and you can find just a single plank of wood, very, very small, sometimes very nice wood because they're designed for shelving. So sometimes people will have a little curio shelf made of teak or some other really fine wood, and you can buy just that one little shelf of wood, and it works very well. And all you got to do is write your pattern on it and then cut it to size or cut it to whatever shape you want it cut to, and therefore end up with a really nice paddle if you sand those edges down, and then cover it in a nice non-water soluble coating of some sort, some sort of a lacquer coating. So yeah, if you're handy with wood, that's one way to do it. But as some of the folks in our chat room have mentioned, ping pong paddles, probably the most common way for people to create paddles for themselves.
Absolutely.
The ping pong, yeah, I've seen people do it now. Ping pong paddles, I say that 10 times fast, tend to be very flimsy. If you're a heavy-duty paddler or if you've got a heavy-duty butt, that ping pong paddle may not last very long at all. But they are handy, and I've seen people use them to great advantage. And you can do things with them. You can enhance them with all sorts of coatings. You can put things on them, as some of the folks in our chat room have said. You can put fur on one side and put maybe a rough finish on the other side. You can enhance the handle. You can toughen it up a little bit. So there's a lot of different things you can do with ping pong paddles. I'll tell you what I use, and I've just bought a couple of these on clearance at my local Walgreens, and it's a paddle ball paddle, and these are about twice the size of a ping pong paddle, and they're about 3 times as thick as a ping pong ball paddle, and it's used for playing paddle ball. I guess it's sort of like handball except with paddles. And these paddles are pretty good size, and they're pretty heavy duty, although with a little heavy use they will also break or fall apart because they're not designed really to go up against your butt. They're designed to go up against a little rubber ball. So take that for what it's worth. But considering the fact that I bought my latest set for, I think, $2.99 on clearance, I'm not going to complain. And they're very, very nice looking. So now here's something that you've probably seen, Red, is going to the hobby store and getting oars. Have you seen those used as paddles?
I do. I actually own one. I got mine from Bass Pro Shop. Cost me like $10. And it's the smallest oar that they made. And it is extremely unforgiving for being such a tiny paddle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen those, and you have to look at them and think, what? They're so small. What would you ever paddle with one of those? I mean, a little canoe made for kittens or something? I mean, it's kind of funny. And yet, I believe most of the time when you get these things, they're designed for artwork, for people to paint cute little flowery designs or to put a pithy saying of some sort on them and then mount them over their fireplace or over the threshold of their door or something. So you see these oars, the kind you use to paddle your canoe, up shit creek without a paddle, those kind of oars. And you can get them very cheap. Usually unfinished oars go very, very cheap because they're designed to be sanded and painted and decorated and then lacquered and then mounted over somebody's door or something. So some of them are very small. I think I've seen them as small as about 18 inches in length. Have you seen anything smaller than that?
No, I think mine is an 18.
Okay.
And it's actually a whole lot of fun. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they are too. I've not purchased one myself, but every time I go into the hobby shop, I play with them, and I think, okay, I'm going to pick one up, and I never do. I always end up leaving it behind somehow. But
well, if you want to borrow mine, let me know.
Well, I'm not a huge fan of using paddles. I'm kind of a barehanded guy myself. However,
yes, or straps.
Yep, but they are interesting, and I think if nothing else, the psychological value of having one mounted on your bedroom wall is probably worth it, considering they're very cheap. So, all right. So some other
I have
DIY.
One.
What's that?
Wiffle ball bats.
A wiffle ball bat. That's right. You had a wiffle ball bat experience just recently. You want to tell us anything about it?
They do give a nice stud. They're a very nice warm-up tool. Believe it or not, some of them are textured, so you do get a little bit of abrasion play. And it is a rather unique experience when you're tied up onto a cross or, bent over. It is a very unique experience to not know, because I was blindfolded. It was great. And I had no idea what the actual object was.
Until afterwards.
It was kind of like a nice massage. It really was. So it's perfect for warm-ups because they're nice and light. You can get them just about anywhere. They're relatively cheap, so if you do end up breaking them, it's not like the end of the world because you just busted a $300 cane. Right.
All you got to do is go down to the local Walmart toy aisle and pick up another wiffle ball bat. Now, you said it's thuddy. I would have thought that a wiffle ball bat would be stingy.
It can be, depending on where you hit and how you do, but it's more, the way it was used on me was more of a warm-up. And I actually had them used in tandem. It was really weird and awesome. I'm so adding that to my collection.
Well, think about this one. I have a couple other makeshift DIY paddles for you. How about a paint stir stick?
Yeah, those hurt.
Or maybe a yardstick.
Yeah, those hurt. I'm learning how to like stingy. I am learning, but I am not there yet. So, yeah.
Excuse me. Now, we have Anna in the chat room saying she doesn't know what a wiffle bat is. Tell her what a wiffle bat is.
Wiffle bat is, I'm assuming it's the Anna we both know. It's kind of like a cricket bat. Not as wide, very small, usually plastic, cylindrical. I have no idea why this thing came about, but it's actually pretty cool. It's about, about 4 inches around, if that.
Mm-hmm. It's like a baseball bat or a cricket bat, but it's got holes in it. It's hollow, and it's got holes in it. So that's why it's called a wiffle bat. You also have the ones that are solid, too, so...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's called a wiffle bat because the wind whiffles through it while you swing it because there are big holes in it. So generally speaking, it's a hollow plastic baseball or cricket bat with holes in it. So that's what it is.
For our crime scene people who like watching those kind of shows like NCIS and stuff, on an episode, they actually filled one with cement to use it as an icebreaker, and it ended up killing a guy. It was actually kind of cool. Sidebar. Squirrel, sorry.
We gotta cut your coffee rations down a little bit in the afternoons, right?
Oh, it was on bones. Okay. Yep. Sorry.
All right, so how about the handle end of a bamboo back scratcher?
I've never had the experience with one of those. I've used them as intended for back scratching, but I have never actually used one to swap myself with, so I can't for sure tell you.
Well, check it out sometime. You take one of those bamboo back scratchers and you just cut the little hand off the end of it and turn that end into the handle, and the wide end that was the handle now becomes the business end of it. And they make pretty good little makeshift stingy paddles, I guess. All right,
yeah,
so...
again, there's the S word, and...
stingy, yeah.
I'm working on it.
Well, there's just a comment in the chat. I don't know if you're looking at the chat room, Red, but there's somebody there that says...
No, actually, I'm not in the chat room tonight.
Yeah. If Red, somebody just said, if Red says it hurts, it hurts.
Well, considering my taste run towards closer to broken bones rather than soft and sensual, don't get me wrong,
high
it's
impact,
great.
but yeah.
But stingy has never really truly been my thing. I like feeling it reverb through me, and that's thanks to a very wonderful sadist who we know and love. And for me to go more towards stingy now, to try and broaden my horizons, it's a big step for me. And I've had paint stick stirrers used on me a couple of times, and it's not pleasant for me, because usually that was being cracked across my backside at a high rate of speed, because I deserved it.
All right, so let's go
and
to
not
canes.
the good way.
I know you don't like canes because they're stingy, but there are a lot of people out there who do like canes. And just for the benefit of people who may be listening and not familiar with canes as BDSM toys, we're not talking about walking canes.
Yeah, those are break bones. Please don't do that.
Yeah, as Americans tend to think...
For people that are listening.
Sure, Americans think of the word cane and they think of a walking cane, but what we're talking about here is really a thin reed of either birch or bamboo or wicker, and it's really no bigger than a pencil usually, and it stings like a mother when it swats you across the butt or the backs of your legs or wherever it is used on you. And some people love it, some people hate it. I've never been a huge fan of canes. However, I am fascinated by the sound and the motion of a cane. I'm not terribly fascinated by the effects that a cane has on a bottom. But I think canes have their place, and I do have some cane-like toys hanging on my bedroom wall. Not because I'm a huge fan of canes, but because some of the people I know happen to be huge fans of canes, and also because I kind of like playing with them, even if I don't particularly like seeing red, welts across the back of somebody's legs or their butt or whatever. So I have mixed feelings.
For your cane, though, and you can use pool stick bags to carry your pool sticks, or golf bags.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. In fact, I did see.
So bad that I know that.
when I was in Tampa a couple of weeks ago, there's a guy there who sells a special case just for your floggers and canes and paddles. And it's got little wheels, just like an airport bag, but it looks like it's kind of long and tall, like a golf bag, you know. And but it's got special hooks in it just to hang your floggers, so that you're not. I mean, obviously, when you go to a play party or something, you throw everything into a bag and you carry it, and your flogger falls get all wrinkled up, and then you got to hang them up and hope that they all straighten back out again. And it's kind of a pain. And it would be kind of neat if you could actually travel with your floggers hanging in the first place, so they never get wrinkled up like that. Same thing with your canes. I mean, they're very fragile, and you have to be very careful about how you pack them and carry them around. And so this was kind of interesting. It's kind of like a skinny golf bag on wheels with a little handle, and it's tall enough to put your canes in, tall enough to hang your floggers in. It's got a little zipper top to it, and it's very, very cool. I'll have to give you his business card next time I see you, Red, and cool stuff. Anyway, we got off topic.
I actually looked online. There used to be a rolling luggage bag. It was actually about the same size as a large airline bag.
Mm-hmm.
And it had compartments that was specially built for toys, for hanging things. And I saw some pictures of it online. I saw some people make comments on it and things like that. The company actually went out of business, and you can't order it anymore. And I was so sad. I was crying because it would be awesome to be able to hang my ball gags and not have them all tangled, and my nipple clamps and all that stuff, and put them in a little compartment so that way you're not trying to peel apart everything.
Yeah, or untangle everything. When you open a bag, this is a problem I have, is I open up my toy bag and everything's all tangled up because you got the falls of your floggers and your chains and your restraints and your ball gags or whatever. Everything's all tangled up in there, and it's like you spend about the first 10 minutes just untangling everything. It's really pain in the butt, but I digress. Let's talk about canes. I know you don't like talking about canes, but we mentioned yardsticks, which is somewhere between a paddle and a cane, I guess. I've tried
redirecting the conversation like 3 times off of this topic, so
I can tell. The most common type of DIY cane is probably just a wooden dowel that you pick up in any hardware store. And you've seen them, or if you haven't seen them, all you have to do is ask somebody, and they'll direct you to a rack of wooden dowels, and they tend to be just round wooden sticks. Finely machined so that they're all perfectly round, but they tend to be also fairly flimsy. So the thinner those dowels are, the more like a typical cane they are, but also the more flimsy they are. The stronger they are, the heavier they are, the less like a typical cane they become, and the more dangerous they become. Because now you're getting to the point where you're not getting that stingy feeling. You're actually causing some serious damage with something like that. So it's a fine line that you have to tread if you're going to use a wooden dowel, as a cane. And there's a good reason why most people don't. It's because they're brittle and they break, especially if it's going up against a hard butt like yours, Red. So how many dowels have you broken anyway?
None, but I've actually broken 3 wooden spoons.
Yeah, okay, that's a hard butt. So, yeah, I would not recommend dowels for anyone other than as a purely disposable sort of a toy that you might get one use out of before it goes crack and has to go in the trash. So wooden dowels, generally not the best idea.
Gearheads we have that listen to the show or anything, but the truck antennas for your CDs, believe it or not, the ones they put the tennis balls on and things like that, the wicket ones, we break those constantly. Going mudding, get them caught, time, you back into the wrong spot and it snaps. You can actually use those because they come in varying lengths and sizes.
Yeah, I have seen those used. Something I saw also the other day, which I really liked. I can't remember where I saw it. I think I saw it in New York City at one of the BDSM clubs I visited in New York City 2 weeks ago, and it was a cane, essentially for all intents and purposes it was a cane, but made out of very thin, very rigid PVC pipe.
Mhm.
And so it's about a half-inch thick.
We also know a local sadist that happens to have a perchance for that.
Yeah. Mhm. Although I had not seen this done the way it was done. It was very well done. And I couldn't stop playing with it. You know me, I get around something like that, I just keep playing with it until I've had my fill. But yeah, if you can find some fairly rigid PVC, very thin PVC pipe, that can make a very nice cane. So all you got to do is put a little non-slip handle on it, and you have yourself a great do-it-yourself cane. There's also some plastic rods that you can get from all sorts of different things, different applications, different toys, even things like plastic rulers. If you go, you'd be amazed at some of the things you find in some of the most interesting places. You know, your local stationery store like Office Depot or Staples will have things like 18-inch rulers, which work out really well. You also have printers, rulers, metal out of metal. You know, you can use, I have seen, and this is something I saw down in Tampa, is the glow-in-the-dark chem lights, the particularly long ones being used for things like necklaces and stuff like that, being used as canes and floggers. So that adds a little bit of entertainment value, is using something like a glow-in-the-dark cane. And then my personal favorite is the carbon fiber evil wand used as a cane. Those, you may not be familiar with those, particularly if you're fairly new to the lifestyle or you're listening for the first time. But carbon fiber is ounce for ounce stronger than steel. You may not.
Sticks.
Yeah, wicked sticks or evil sticks. They're called the short ones from 12 to 20 inches are called evil sticks, and the long ones are called evil wands. And it's kind of a cross between a cane and a little whip, I guess. You may not think you're familiar with carbon fiber sticks, but just think about the last time you put together a child's kite. The sticks used to be, when I was a kid, when you bought a kite, the sticks used to be made out of balsa wood, which is very light but not very strong. Now when you buy a kite and you put it together, the sticks that hold it together are usually made out of this carbon fiber material. Again, ounce for ounce stronger than steel. And, when your kite gets eaten by a tree, make sure you salvage those carbon fiber sticks, because they make great little do-it-yourself canes. They are so tiny, at least thin. They're almost as thin as a pencil lead, but they do not break. They do not bend, other than in a springy fashion. They don't bend the way a piece of steel would, where you bend it and it stays bent. You bend the carbon fiber, it goes right back to its original shape. So it's very flexible, very stingy. They're called evil
wonderful
because...
whelps.
Yeah, they're called evil sticks and evil wands because they leave evil marks on your skin and they hurt like a mother. But they are really, really interesting and just technological wonders. You should have one just for the technological fascination. Just playing with it for a while, you'll just learn so much about the characteristics of something like that and what you can do with it, all the different things you can do with it. So I recommend it highly. So we've spent the first half of the show talking about canes and paddles, do-it-yourself canes and paddles. We're talking about pervertables, taking everyday items that you find around your house or at the hobby store or the hardware store and turning them into kinky toys. And so we've covered canes and paddles. When we get back from the break, we're going to talk about restraints, floggers, cupping, corning, figging, hot wax, cock and ball torture, and all kinds of interesting things. So we'll be back in about 2 minutes, right after the musical break. You're listening to Domination and Submission Radio. I'm Mike Makai, and my co-host is Little Red. We'll be right back. We are back. You're listening to DS Radio, Domination and Submission Radio. My name's Mike Makai. My co-host is Little Red. We are talking about do-it-yourself pervertables, things that you find around the house or at the hobby shop or at your local hardware store that you can turn into kinky toys, kinky equipment, or even kinky furniture. And we have covered in the first half of the show do-it-yourself canes and paddles. And now we're going to move on to the wonderful world of DIY restraints. Now, when you're talking restraints, you're covering a wide range of materials that you can use. Obviously, taking my tie off of my neck and tying your hands with it is a form of restraint, and it's using obviously a DIY sort of material to do that. And we're not really talking about that because that's what you do on the spur of the moment when you just don't happen to have a pair of handcuffs or a pair of wrist or ankle cuffs around. You might use your stockings or your necktie or whatever you have on hand. But what we're talking about here is preparing something that will always work for you under any circumstances and you'll be proud of. And so I'm gonna toss out one of the most common and useful and affordable forms of restraint that you can use in your BDSM play, and that's going to be your dog choker chain. Now, there are going to be a lot of people who go, "Oh, how tacky to use a dog chain for your BDSM play." Well, guess what? These chains are very high quality. They are very affordable. You can get a dozen of them for less than $20 probably. They're all they come in various lengths, anywhere from 18 inches to 36 inches probably. They're designed so that you can feed the chain through its own end loops and create a solid loop of chain, or like a choker chain as you would use it with your dog. But they also work very, very well for all sorts of restraints and for short lengths of chain. And really, if you had to go out and cut chain to order to various lengths so that you could use it with your bondage furniture or your bondage bed or your bishop's chair or whatever it is you're going to use short lengths of chain or any other straps or rope for, you just can't get a better deal than these short lengths of dog chain that you can pick up at any pet store or in the pet aisle at your local department store like Walmart or that sort of thing. Have you ever used these kinds of chains, Red?
No, I haven't. I tend to go more for Home Depot and Lowe's, and one of my local favorite stores is Atwood's, which is a feed and tack supply store. Yeah.
Now so what do you, for short lengths of materials for, say, strapping someone down or chaining them to equipment, what do you use?
You can go buy, like at Walmart, they have those nylon cords in the rolls of like 50 to 100 feet, and you can cut the cord, create, slip knot loops, so that way you can attach it to something and then put it to the cuff or whatever you're trying to use. Because, it's cheap, it's disposable. If it happens to get fluids on it, it's not a major deal to dispose of it. My big concern with some of the chains is people tend to not use it wisely. They don't use rope wisely either. Dog chains, especially if you're restraining around the throat, is not a brilliant idea because those do tend to kink and lock up, and you're SOL if you don't have a set of bolt cutters quickly.
Yeah, no, I would never use them as the restraints themselves, but I use them, for example, when you have wrist cuffs, to attach the wrist cuff to the bed or to the cage or to the St. Andrew's cross or whatever. So in other words, not as the restraints themselves, but as the connectors to the equipment. You know what I'm talking about?
Okay, see, you didn't say the connectors. You said restraint.
Well, connectors don't work without restraints. Don't work without connectors. Cuffs don't work unless they're connected to something.
I'm just being a smart ass. Sorry.
Yeah, well, if you're going to be an ass, be a smart one. That's what my dad always used to say. So, yeah, these chains, like I said, these are very short lengths of chain. Just imagine, for example, let's say you were going to tie somebody or chain somebody down to the bed. You might have wrist cuffs, you might have ankle cuffs, but those wrist cuffs and ankle cuffs have to be attached to something. And imagine about a 2-foot length of chain going from each corner of the bed, which you would attach the cuff to. That's what I'm talking about. So a nice 2-foot length of chain, you can go to your local hardware store and cut it, but it may not be suitable because you still don't have good connecting rings at each end and that sort of thing. These chains do, and they're decent. They're already about the right size. They've got nice heavy-duty rings on the ends, each end. They're clean. They're easy to care for. So I think they're a great deal as long as you don't, again, like you said, you don't want to put it around anybody's neck or anything like that. So
one of my favorites is to use not the choker chains, but the actual leads that you tie a dog out to in the yard if you stake them out. They come in blue and red and green. They're very hardy, and they've got the clips on the ends with both clips on the ends. And you can buy 2 of those, one for the head, one for the feet, and wrap them around the legs of your bed or under your mattress and tie them together so you can shorten them with, standard cable ties or anything like that. And you can put them away and nobody knows what they actually are. You can hang them up in your garage and be like, oh, I'm thinking about getting a dog, or, oh, it's for the clothesline because they're sturdier and I can take them down and the weather's not going to ruin them. And you can come up with a lot of excuses for that.
No, absolutely. Now, you can also use, another one of my favorite DIY restraint systems is Velcro straps. And where I got that? I became a big fan of Velcro when I was in the Army, because the Army, when you're out there playing war games out in the woods, they use what, for all intents and purposes, is laser tag. You know this from your time in the Army, Red. For those of you who don't know, Red is an ex-Army person. So she's been out there with camouflage on her face, running around the woods with guns, shooting blanks.
Hell, I do that for Halloween.
Yeah, well, you're weird. But anyway, so one of the things that you do in the Army is you play laser tag, basically out there in the woods at night for weeks and weeks at a time. It's pretty miserable. It's not fun like it sounds. But you, in order to allow your vehicles to be part of the game. In other words, how do you destroy a vehicle when you're playing laser tag? Well, you shoot the vehicle with a giant laser on a cannon or a tank. And so you've got to put these laser receptors all over your vehicle, and in order to do that, they use these big, thick straps of Velcro all over your vehicle, about 3 inches wide and 20, 30 feet long, And so you basically, to get ready for these war games, they would hand you these great big spools of Velcro, which, think about this. If you go to the hobby shop and you buy a little tiny package of Velcro, what is it, like $4, and it's like 8 inches of Velcro, they would hand you like 80 feet of Velcro. And I'm going, holy crap, this stuff is awesome. And so at the end of these exercises, I would always take home just tons and tons of this Velcro because it's, you rip it off at the end of the exercise. You rip it off the vehicles, and it's not really usable again. So I ended up with lots of heavy-duty Velcro and tons of it. And it was enough that you could do that sumo that thing where you put Velcro on the wall and you run up and you jump on the wall and stick to the wall. You ever seen that? That's how much Velcro I would go home with, and so I became a big fan of it. These days, unless you're lucky enough to be, I'm not going to say lucky enough because that was some pretty miserable times out in the woods, but unless you're lucky enough to go home from your Army maneuvers with spools and spools of Velcro straps, you're going to have to pay for it someplace, and it can be pretty expensive. But I will tell you, if you go to Office Depot or some of these hardware stores, you can get Velcro strips relatively, inexpensively. I'm not going to say it's cheap, but it's not as expensive as you might think if you get it in the right places, in the right formats. So, but it makes great DIY restraints, and it's something that works very quickly. It adjusts itself to any size. It's great for attaching somebody to something else, like legs to a person's legs to the legs of a chair, for example. Velcro works better at that than anything else I can think of. Attaching somebody's arms to the arms of a chair, Velcro is probably your best bet there. Attaching a person's limbs to their other limbs, again, Velcro works very, very good at that. So give it some thought. Try Velcro out. If you haven't tried it, just have a few straps handy. One of the best ways to use it is to sew or glue the front and back of the Velcro to each other. So so you basically have one strip of Velcro with the fuzzy side on one side and the hook side on the other, and all you have to do is wrap it around, say, two legs, and boom, those two legs are stuck to each other. So any other DIY pervertible restraint systems that you use, Red?
I like going to Outlets again, which is one of my favorite stores to walk into, because I immediately go towards the horse tack and hobble cuffs, which is something we do to horses when they're non-compliant and don't want us to work on them vet-wise or getting their teeth done. They're basically like shackles. They're leather. They go in varying sizes. You can use them for ankles or wrists and things like that. And usually they're connected to each other, so you can use them for overhead restraint or, certain hog-tie positions, things like that. They're fairly inexpensive. They're very long-lasting as long as you maintain the leather and care for it. Some of the straps you can find at Home Depot have worked for wrist and ankle restraints. I'm not a huge fan of Velcro for the simple fact I don't like the sound. It bothers me. I don't know why. It's kind of like nails on a chalkboard.
Well, all that means is you need earplugs in addition to your blindfold.
Oh, I am, I'm a huge fan of sensory deprivation. I usually have my earbuds in playing my music. But yeah, you can walk into just about any hardware store or any feed and tack store for horse supplies, farm equipment, things like that. And you can find these things fairly inexpensively that no one would think twice about if you had it thrown in, a bag or something and tossed in a garage. No one would think twice about it.
Sure. Now, we did have some mention in the chat room just now about zip ties. And zip ties are really handy. Very, very handy.
They are, and they're very
They're
dangerous.
also very dangerous, yes. You and I both went to that immediately. They're very dangerous. They can cut off circulation very easily. They can be over-tightened very easily. They can cut through skin and tissue very easily. So use zip ties with great caution. I do not like to use or even see used zip ties around the wrists or ankles or anything like that. Where I like to use a zip tie is connecting something to something else. So,
yes, I was about to make that point. If you want to use your zip ties, please use them on inanimate objects. Do not use them on people. You are going to run the risk in about 2.5 seconds.
And even if you set them very loose, it's very easy for your bottom to inadvertently tighten them themselves. And so you could set a zip tie very loose to allow proper circulation or whatever, and all you have to do is avert your gaze for a moment, and for the next thing you know, it's cutting off circulation and it's been tightened up somehow. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of them for that reason, but there are a lot of people who do use them, and I just would caution people to be very careful and make sure you use them. I highly recommend you use them only to connect, say, a wrist restraint to a chain, or an ankle restraint to something else or a piece of equipment or something, but not the ankle itself.
Now, if you're going to use it for hog-tie purposes and you're putting the wrist cuff to the ankle cuff or, reverse
cuff to cuff
hog-tie
or
something like that, absolutely. But please, please, please do not use these on actual skin. This is going...
Right.
That scares me.
So let's talk about floggers. You like floggers. I like floggers. What's not to like about floggers? Now, we have a mutual friend, Red and I. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and kind of name her, our friend Cheeky, who has made a flogger.
Vader.
Let me tell the story.
Shout out.
Baby Vader, yeah. Made a flogger.
Lady Vader.
I thought she was calling herself. She's a baby dom. That's what she calls herself, a baby dom. So.
She calls herself a baby dom, but she goes all Lady Vader on you.
Okay. Well, anyway, she did something which I find fascinating, and this is something I want to try, but I haven't had the chance to do yet. But she went to the Goodwill store, and she shopped around at Goodwill until she found a leather jacket, and she bought it for, I don't know, like $3 or something. I don't know. It was just a couple of dollars, I think. She took it home, and she got out her scissors, and she proceeded to cut it up into leather straps or leather strips. And the leather strips became the falls of a flogger. So she basically created her own flogger out of a leather jacket that she bought at Goodwill for just a few dollars. And I thought to myself, that is ingenious. That is really a smart way to get your hands on some high-quality leather at a very low price. I guess the only question would be getting enough of it that you can create a decent flogger out of it, and having it heavyweight enough that it works the way you want it to. And I've played with the flogger that she created that way. It's a little bit of a lightweight, at least by my standards. I like my flogger, like you. I like my floggers kind of heavy duty, a little more thuddy. But there are people who like the light floggers, like the little rabbit fur floggers or the little feather floggers or whatever. So for those people,
I've never understood those except for maybe sensory play to throw people off balance. But
I think
yeah.
We're getting off topic here a little bit, but I think mainly the appeal of those is to remove the fear of the flogger from somebody who might be afraid of a regular flogger for whatever reason. So they start them out with a little fuzzy rabbit fur flogger or something that doesn't hurt at all. And really, most floggers don't hurt at all, no matter what you do. But even so, there are people with a healthy fear of them, and you can't really blame them if they've never had any real experience with them. So God knows they look scary.
Some of your local hobby shops, Joann's Fabrics, things like that, you can go in and they have bolts and bolts of suede and leather and different things like that. It's not going to be elk, it's not going to be deer, it's not going to be bullhide. But you could go in and buy quite a few yards for not as bad. There's other specialty shops. There's one up in the city, Oklahoma City. I'm going to give a shout out to. It's called Tandy Leather. They have some really nice suede, some really nice leathers and different styles, different colors, things like that. It does run a little expensive, but
I'm going to give you
can kind of pick and choose what you want and go home and
give you a couple other tips. If you go to your local hobby shop, very often they will have plastic bags full of remnants, fabric remnants, leather remnants. And so you can sometimes get a big bag of leather remnants for about $2, $3, very, very cheap, mainly because they are, they're just odd sizes and shapes, and they're all different colors and things like that. So you may not get something that's visually what you're looking for, or you might have to pick and choose to get enough of any one color or any one type of leather to accomplish your project with. But you might check that out. The other thing you might do is this is how I made my most recent flogger project, my own do-it-yourself flogger, and I like it a lot. I really got to tell you, I really am enjoying this latest flogger that I made. It's a very heavyweight flogger. And it is both thuddy and stingy, which I kind of like too. But I went to your favorite store, Red, Atwood's Ranch Supply Store. It's a feed and tack store, a ranch store for those of you who aren't from this part of the country. And if you go back into the horse tack section, you will find a big bundle of leather straps, and these straps are already cut just like you would need them for for the falls of a flogger. And I mean, we're talking a big bundle of them, and for about $20 or $25, you get all of the leather falls you need to create a flogger, maybe even more than one flogger. And considering the fact that the flogger you end up with, the flogger I ended up with, is something you would spend a couple $100 for otherwise, possibly. Now, this isn't real high-end leather. It's designed for training your horse. I don't know what the heck horse trainers do with these leather straps, but I know what I did with them, and that is I measured it out, and I made a really, really nice heavy-duty flogger out of them, and the whole thing cost me less than $30. And I know I would have spent $200 for anything even remotely like it if I had bought it retail someplace. So that's something else that I would recommend, is just check out your feed and tack store and look back there amongst the horse training supplies, the crops, the riding crops, the pig slappers. All of those are very inexpensive if you get them from a feed and tack store. In fact, the same riding crop that you spend $6 for at a feed and tack store, you'll spend $26 for the exact same one at an adult novelty store. Okay, same thing with the pig slappers, which are just heavy-duty leather straps, sometimes doubled or tripled over for effect. You spend $10 for them at the feed and tack store, you'll spend $50 for the exact same one at an adult novelty store. So visit your local ranch supply store if you get the chance. You'll be amazed at some of the great deals that you see there. All right, so we did mention briefly that there are lots of different ways to make non-leather floggers, chainmail floggers, rubber floggers.
Very good for electroplay.
Yep, I've seen floggers made out of glue sticks, believe it or not. Very interesting. I've seen floggers made out of
glue sticks, yeah.
Yep, yep. And what's neat about those is all you got to do is heat up the one end of the stick, and it sticks to whatever the handle you stick it into. So you basically create a handle. Let's say you're using a PVC pipe or something as a handle. You just basically heat up some hot glue and stick the hot glue sticks in there, and they're sticking out like like the falls of a flogger. And I've seen them used that way. They sell them that way. There are people who actually sell them at some of these fetish conventions I've been to. You do have the rubber floggers, the fur floggers, the chem-light floggers. Think about it this way. Those glow-in-the-dark chem-light necklaces that you can buy for about $1 each at the local dollar store, a whole handful of those, you've got yourself a glow-in-the-dark flogger. How about that? Mm-hmm. So all kinds of neat ideas for do-it-yourself toys there. We're getting close to the end of the show, so let's talk real quick about cupping. You do cupping, I do cupping. You can do cupping. Well, if you know how to do cupping and you've learned and you've been trained, you can use any cups. Dollar store cups will work for you even. Hot wax play. You probably want to choose your waxes carefully. You do want to use paraffin, not beeswax.
The best thing to do is go to your local hobby store and get the paraffin wax blocks.
Yep, exactly. Don't use beeswax.
Yeah, melt it down, and you can put dyes in it to make them whatever color you want, or glow in the dark, or black light.
Sure. The one thing you don't want to do is use those long.
She's awesome at doing that.
Yep. One thing you don't want to do is use the candle, the long, slender, tapered candles that you have at your dinner table. Do not use those. Those are very high temperature. They will burn you. And unfortunately, those are the ones people go to first when they first start playing around with hot wax. So, word of warning, word of warning, don't use those candles. The thicker, wider candles are and made of paraffin, not beeswax, are the ones you want to use. They have a lower melting temperature and will not burn you. Let's see. Nipple clamps. Chopsticks and rubber bands make great do-it-yourself nipple clamps. Chip clips, hair clips, chopsticks, spring-loaded tweezers, all kinds of things that you can find around the house.
Your common everyday office supply store has the binder clamps for rings of paper and things like that. Those also work well. Clothespins.
Absolutely. Good old-fashioned clothespins are probably the classic do-it-yourself BDSM nipple clamp. Well, we are at the end of our time. I want to thank you for being with us, Red. We missed you last week. You going to be back next week?
I'm hoping, provided that life doesn't go to hell in a handbasket. I should be.
Well, it's always going to hell in a handbasket. You know, just got to figure out a way to enjoy the ride. Thanks to all of you for listening to DS Radio. I'm Mike Makai, my co-host Little Red, and we'll see you next week.